Hello, and welcome back to the world of Wysteria. We will now continue with part 2 of chapter 8. It was magnificent. The castle's outer walls, 30 feet high and crowned with battlements, enclosed an area slightly larger than the town square. There were round towers, a story taller than the walls, on the 2 front corners. Another tower, even larger in height and breadth, defended the back left corner. And higher still rose a massive square keep that formed the back right quadrant of the structure. The castle faced west, with its entire southern wall standing on the edge of a deep ravine. Slightly behind and to the right of the keep was a spectacular waterfall, a vertical river plunging hundreds of feet down the sheer cliff, from high above the castle to the bottom of the gorge far below. "So that's the sound I heard," said Emily, staring up at the falls. "It's absolutely stunning." "I haven't been inside yet," Will told her. "I decided I would wait for you." "You're sweet," she said, lightly squeezing his hand. Then, at a brisk walk, they headed across the outer grounds of the fortress, following a wide, flagstone path that led to the entrance, where a sturdy wooden drawbridge, lying prone, spanned a narrow stream that curled around the left corner of the fortress, then ran along the front wall before spilling over the edge of the chasm. They crossed the bridge, passed beneath the raised portcullis, and proceeded into the inner courtyard. Once within the walls, Emily stopped and looked around her, then pointed to the top of the keep. "Just imagine the view of the falls from up there," she said. "Yes, it would be quite dramatic," Will replied. But there was another view he was anxious to show her. "This way," he said, leading her across the courtyard toward the entrance of the inner stronghold. When they'd climbed the half-dozen steps to the portico, Will let go of Emily's hand and approached the pair of imposing wooden doors. "After you," he said, pushing one of them open. "Scream if you see any hungry goblins," he added, as she stepped through the doorway ahead of him. "What?" she said, halting. "You know, to warn me so that I can run away," he explained. Emily turned her head and glared at him. Will chuckled. "Kidding," he said, taking her hand again. Together, they entered a large room with a high ceiling, the main hall, obviously designed for receiving and entertaining guests. Long wooden tables, set for feasting, lined each side of the room, leaving the center open, presumably for performers or dancing. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat 2 ornamentally carved thrones upholstered in deep red velvet. 2 long heraldic banners, one purple, one green, both with golden charges, hung behind them. "The party room," said Emily. She then skipped to the front of the great hall and took a seat on one of the thrones. "Off with your head," she declared, assuming a regal air. "My head?" said Will, advancing to the center of the room. "Yes," she replied, "for using me as goblin bait." "Ah, I see. Well, There might be a guillotine in the dungeon. There's a dungeon, she said, standing and stepping down from the dais. Of course, he answered. It's a castle, isn't it? I'll give you a tour sometime. But let me show you the upstairs first. Emily agreed, telling him his beheading could wait. The couple walked back to the staircase, located near the entryway, climbed up several flights, then followed a hallway that led them to a set of double doors. This should be it, said Will under his breath. He lifted the latch and pushed open the doors, revealing a spacious, elegantly furnished room, the private quarters for the lord of the castle. It's perfect, Emily pronounced. Grand, but still cozy. On one side, to their right, was a stately but comfortable-looking bed, with bookshelves set in the dark paneled walls on either side of the headboard. To their left was a sitting area, a love seat and several stuffed chairs arranged around a low table in front of a large fireplace. Directly across from them, an open doorway led out onto a balcony. Will was glad she approved. He was pleased himself. Every aspect of the castle, including this room, had turned out just as he'd envisioned it. Here, he said, walking her across the room to the balcony. This is what I wanted to show you. As soon as they stepped through the doorway and into the sunshine, Emily stopped and stared, dumbstruck for a moment, before voicing a simple, "Wow." Indeed, thought Will. It was a breathtaking view. The balcony faced south and overhung the ravine, with the waterfall on their left, not 50 yards away, cascading past them. Emily walked forward to the surrounding stone balustrade and stared down into the chasm. Will turned and looked up, curious how close they were to the top of the keep. Not far, he saw, just another 2 stories. Then he joined her at the railing. It's a long way down, she said, her eyes fixed on the churning pool at the foot of the falls. Yes, it is, he replied, following the course of the fallen water as it passed beneath their dizzying perch, chasing westward through the narrow canyon. This is a remarkable creation, said Emily, after they'd shared a moment of odd silence. She kissed Will on the cheek, then stepped over to a cushioned bench and sat, facing the falls. Did you plan all of this? Yes, he answered. It's pretty much what I imagined, inside and out. Of course, it's much different standing here and seeing it out there. Interesting, she murmured. I'll have to tell Jeremy about this new development. Jeremy? The person I went to see, she replied. Ah, yes, he said, taking a seat next to her. So tell me about your visit. I met Jeremy about a year ago, Emily began. He's an immortal, a dreamer who has passed away in the waking world and now only resides in this universe. He's rather eccentric, to say the least. I'm never sure what to expect when I see him, but he's very wise and understands more about dreaming than anyone I know. He's also exceptionally talented, both as a builder and as a traveler. In his world, he can create and alter things at will, and compared to the way he moves around, my traveling is very clumsy. Such ambidextrous dreamers are extremely rare. I've been told there are others like him, but he's the only person I know who can both shape the fabric of this universe and move through it freely. What's his world like? Will asked. Pretty amazing, often bizarre, she said. And it's different each time I've been there. Not just a few new features, but completely different. Since worlds always reflect their creators, it depends on his mood, which can change drastically. During one of my previous visits, he was friendly and loquacious, though prone to rambling. But this time, he was rather quiet, contemplative, and distant. His world was rather surreal, like a Zen wasteland, very stark, vast open spaces with strange rock formations and a few bare trees scattered around. The sky directly overhead was a dark blue-purple, but near the horizon, in all directions, there was an orange glow. It was very odd and a little disconcerting, not frightening, but sort of eerie. His appearance had changed as well. He had a short beard and mustache, and his hair was much longer than it was a few months ago. And rather than his customary dark suit, he was wearing a white silk tunic, loose-fitting pants, and slippers. Even though he wasn't in a talkative mood, he seemed very interested in hearing about you and the world you've put together here. About me? Said Will. What did he say? For the most part, he just asked questions, Emily replied. I would answer. He would think for a long time, and then he would ask another question. He was quite intrigued. I wouldn't be surprised if he pays you a visit sometime soon. Though Will welcomed Emily's company here, he was used to thinking of Wysteria as his sanctuary, now theirs, and the thought of another person, a stranger, stepping into his world bothered him. At the same time, he was curious to meet this enigmatic man who might be able to answer more of his questions. Do you think other people besides you have been here? He asked. Or would I have seen them? I don't know, she answered. Some travelers try to stay hidden, observing from a distance or blending in with the other natives. But they're generally the harmless type. Are you saying there are travelers who aren't harmless? Will asked. People are people, Will, no matter what universe they live in. There are sad people, and angry people, and nasty people. I suppose this is something we should talk about, just so you're prepared, she said. I'm probably the only traveler to visit here so far, but at some point, others may find your world, and some of them may come here to cause trouble. What kind of trouble? He asked, alarmed. Usually nothing serious, she replied. More often than not, drifters are just annoying, though they can sometimes be pretty destructive. Drifters? Is that what they're called? That's a common term for them, but there are others, she said. Personally, I like mondaiji, Japanese for troublemaker. Drifters is appropriate, though. They're like the bad cowboys who ride into a small town, get drunk in the saloon, start fights, harass people, shoot up the place, and then ride away. Do they actually travel in groups? Can travelers do that? He asked. Yes, she said. It is possible for people to travel together. Usually not in large gangs, though. That's very difficult to coordinate. Sometimes they're alone, but drifters tend to come in pairs. You shouldn't be worried. Most travelers are perfectly nice people who just want to explore new worlds. The bad ones are the exception, and they tend to be attracted to the nastier places, the worlds where anything goes. They can generally have more fun there. But some of them do like to terrorize benign worlds, like wolves attacking a herd of sheep. It makes them feel powerful, I suppose. This is all rather disturbing, Will confessed to her. I'm sorry, she said, smiling sympathetically. But I thought you should know. Don't let it upset you, though. That would be, as you might guess, counterproductive. What if they do happen to show up here, he asked. Emily thought for a moment. Honestly, it's probably best to ignore them, like bratty children, she said. Confronting them might be a mistake. It would only provoke them and, perhaps, lead to a bigger conflict. Let them play until they get bored and leave. Isn't there any way to defend against them? I don't think you can keep them out, if that's what you mean, she replied. I suppose your best defense is to be who you are. Keep building a beautiful and harmonious world. Emily took Will's hand. Can we forget about this for now? I want to enjoy being here in this lovely place with you. Of course, he said, showing her a smile. I'm sorry we got sidetracked. Please, tell me more about your meeting with Jeremy. And this concludes part 2, and we will be back shortly with part 3 to hear more about her visit with Jeremy.